How's it going, everybody? So in this video I want to talk about my second experiment that I'm just now beginning with some of Ray Peat's principles. Now, I don't really know how to explain my feelings towards this whole Ray Peat thing, just because I feel like the vast majority of people who follow Ray Peat's principles and try to do diet experiments and things using Ray Peat's principles probably don't understand much of anything that comes out of the Ray Peat community. I think most people don't understand the science or the studies or how to interpret those studies. I think they just hear a bunch of mechanistic mumbo jumbo coming from people like Danny Roddy and what's that other guy, Georgi Dinkoff or whatever his name is, and they see studies flashing on the screen and they're just like super entertained by all the mechanistic jargon. I think most people don't actually understand how to approach those things, and it's more of a fascination and a trend rather than actual rational decision making. Dated opinions on this and kind of like where I'm at with this. So first of all, if many people have seen on my Instagram, I am kind of putting into practice some of Ray Peat's principles. And I've gotten all sorts of weird questions about this that I'm going to kind of dig into as the video continues, so bear with me on that. Let's see. So first of all, crowd that I think are worth exploring, and there's also some potentially dangerous ideas coming out of the Ray Peat crowd. So what are some of the good principles that I am working with? The first one is a calcium to phosphorus ratio. So I hope my video is not glitching out. My recorder is looking all weird. My computer's acting funny, so apologize if the video comes out kind of glitchy. But the calcium to phosphorus ratio. So one of Ray Peat's big ideas is making sure that you're consuming a lot more calcium than phosphorus, or more so just balancing out the calcium and phosphorus. And the way that he recommends you achieve this is by consuming the vast majority of your protein intake from dairy. It's basically the general approach. And of course, they keep saying that Ray Peat has no fast and like rule of thumb type of dietary recommendations, more so principles, but basically the main way to achieve the ideal calcium intake is from consuming most of your protein intake from dairy. Typically, they recommend 80 to 100 grams of protein, but for me personally, I believe it's much more ideal to get 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight worth of protein. And so anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams of calcium or more is probably the ideal intake, but the main thing is making sure that I believe it's a 2-to-1 calcium to phosphorus ratio. Don't quote me on that. So if you get 1,000 milligrams of phosphorus, you want to make sure you get about 2,000 milligrams of calcium, but I might be wrong on that ratio. And phosphorus is highly abundant in things like muscle meat, whereas calcium is hardly found in many foods whatsoever. Now the thing is, for me, I thought that I had a dairy allergy for a long time, although I've been drinking quite a lot of milk and eating a lot of cheese the last couple of days since I started this, and haven't noticed any problems with my breathing like I did before. So, for people who do have problems with dairy, which a lot of people, especially watching my channel, probably do, a better way to achieve this would be bone meal. And don't worry if there's a little bit of calcium carbonate added to the bone meal, especially if it's a Now Foods brand, because that's just to balance out the phosphorus. In fact, coming from a Ray Peat principle type of paradigm, calcium carbonate is probably the ideal source of calcium. Not, like if we're talking calcium supplements, because carbonate in particular will contribute to carbon dioxide, and that's more of a simplified explanation for it. But basically, carbon dioxide is a very beneficial substance that we should be maximizing according to Ray Peat. Now, for me personally, I believe a lot of that is kind of deeper and more nuanced and not clear-cut. But if you're consuming bone meal and it contains calcium carbonate added, that's nothing but a bonus coming from this paradigm. And so anyway, for me personally, my main concern with the calcium thing is this relationship to parathyroid hormone and energy production, as well as mood and depression. So there's a lot of very different opinions going back and forth with calcium, magnesium, vitamin D, parathyroid hormone, and these things. And a lot of it just has to do with what you believe is going on with calcium, vitamin D, and parathyroid. So essentially where I'm at right now is that vitamin D and calcium is extremely beneficial and important, and we should be maximizing our intake and making sure we get plenty of vitamin A from things like liver and egg yolks. And basically what happens is when vitamin D intake is low and calcium intake is low, you get high parathyroid hormone to balance out the blood calcium. And what it can do is pull calcium from the bones, which can be problematic, obviously, for bone health. And despite the fact that your body's now pulling more calcium from the bones, if you don't have enough vitamin D, then that calcium being pulled from the bones is not going to be properly metabolized for things like mood and neurotransmitter production and things like that. And so you're going to be getting lots of calcium being secreted from the bone tissue, but not a lot of it's actually being used for the processes in which it's necessary for without adequate vitamin D. And so you need to consume plenty of calcium so that your body doesn't have to pull it from your own bone, and plenty of vitamin D to actually utilize that calcium, that, regardless of where it's coming from. So recently there's been a lot of talk about vitamin D being toxic, and the reason why vitamin D status goes down in people who are sick has nothing to do with vitamin D deficiency, but more so vitamin D being a marker itself of sickness and illness. And that the reason why vitamin D status goes down in people who are sick, apparently, according to anti-vitamin D people, is because vitamin D is a status of health rather than a cause of health. So it's a correlation versus causation type of thing. But what I believe, and kind of what the Ray Peat's general consensus, is that the active form of vitamin D basically is vitamin D3, what you would take orally. And there's this substance in your blood, calciferol, I believe is what it is, that is raised in disease states. And when you take vitamin D orally or from the sun, it lowers calciferol, because calciferol is like an inactive form of vitamin D. And it'll go down if you consume the active form, and it'll go up if you don't have enough. So anyway, let's kind of drop that, but let's just say we need enough vitamin D, we need enough calcium, and enough vitamin A, and obviously K2, which will all come from vitamin D foods, generally speaking. So I think that the calcium and vitamin D is something that I've lacked for a long time. And so one of the big things that got me really interested in this is, so I made a video recently where I said, hey, I don't give a crap that I'm bald. I'm literally numb now to this baldness, and I enjoy the fact that I'm bald now, because so many more women find me more attractive now that I'm bald. And really, I don't care about my looks as much these days because of that experiment. Watch the video if you want the whole freaking story. I went real deep into that. But basically, I don't give a shit about how I look and whether I'm bald or not. And it was women who wanted me to become bald in the first place, which is interesting. Now, the thing is, I got a bunch of comments on that video and many videos in the past. I used to have just random-ass people who would come on my video and say, hey, you're bald. That's a symptom of a disease, basically. And so it got me interested in looking deeper into the pathogenesis behind baldness. Baldness is a symptom of hyperparathyroidism, essentially. So I started to look, and you know, back in 2015, I was reversing my baldness anyway. I had started growing my hair out super thick. I was taking herbs like Hoshu Wu. I was consuming diatomaceous earth for the silica content. And I was consuming a lot of these foods that at the time I was determined would nourish my hair and reverse my baldness. And it was working until eventually I just gave up because it was so much freaking work. So recently I kind of was interested again. Because I'm really open-minded, I just want to give some of these concepts their due diligence, I guess is the word, and really look into is there any like logic or rationale behind some of this information people keep saying. A lot of these people, they just hear, oh, you know, baldness is a sign of ill health, so they just go and repeat that to people, and these people generally have never dealt with baldness before. Other people believe that baldness is a symptom of genetics and there's not much you can do. And other people believe that baldness is just a sign of like high DHT. The repeat crowd believes that baldness is a sign of hypothyroidism, hyperparathyroidism, and also like low carbon dioxide or something. So I personally do not believe in all of this low thyroid talk of the repeat crowd, and I think that it's crazy all these people are taking desiccated thyroid and they're all hopped up on thyroid and aspirin and taking progesterone and things like that. And I understand some of the therapeutic benefit and how it might be able to boost your mood and boost your metabolism like they're all obsessed with, but I really don't think that's healthy. I don't think it should be necessary. And I can't help but feel like all of their nutrition, the way that they're structuring their nutrition is requiring them to supplement all this extra hormones support and things. I just don't think that that's healthy, and I'll have to go deeper into that in another video. But so I don't believe that it's the low thyroid and this and that, but I do believe that maybe a calcium deficiency, a vitamin D deficiency, and possibly an imbalance in the parathyroid gland might actually have something to do with baldness. And so, you know, they believe, oh, well, that means that the thyroid must be low if you have high parathyroid or something like that. But anyway, so I'm just going to give this a try. The main thing that I'm doing is I've been megadosing vitamin D3 for about 2 weeks now. I'm going to keep up about 20,000 IUs, maybe for another 4 weeks or so, give or take. And I'm supplementing with bone meal again. And I've increased my dairy intake substantially. So if I start to notice that I can't breathe or I'm having an allergic reaction to the dairy protein, I'm just going to double up on the bone meal. But yeah, so that's a big thing that I'm doing right now, is increasing my calcium intake. So that's probably the foundational change I'm making from Ray Peat's principles. So obviously I don't advocate or believe in this hormone supplementation that these people are into, aspirin supplementation. I'm just not into all that. I don't think it's beneficial. I don't think it's a good idea. I believe it's causing more imbalances down the line. So that's my take there, and I can go deeper into another video. Now, what about the carbohydrates? Well, so these people believe that sugar is an anti-stress substance. Some of them advocate consuming large doses of refined white sugar. So I've seen some people, and these might not be legit Ray Peat followers or whatever, but they're just pouring tablespoons of sugar into their coffee in the morning and stuff like that. And they advocate consuming super strong megadose coffee throughout the day, consuming it with their meals to prevent iron absorption and stuff like that. And I think that that's another problem I have with Ray Peat's principles is, underestimating the dangers of sugar and really just saying sugar's like a freaking health food. Reminds me of Durian Rider a little bit. So I think some of their information on fructose and fructose interfering with the absorption of phosphorus or whatever, I think that that's good information. And I do think, and also let's remember whole fruit is only 20% fructose, if even that. And the way it's metabolized is not really pathogenic. But I think sucrose is a different animal altogether when we're talking just pure refined sugar. And also fruit juice. They advocate consuming fruit juice, which depends. There's a lot of nuances involved in that. I think whole fruit is good, and I think if we can, what I'm taking from Ray Peat is consuming whole fruits alongside my meat is probably a good idea, and maybe switching to the dairy protein instead of the meat is probably a good idea as well, because the fruit is supposed to help balance out the phosphorus, and if I'm consuming more dairy and less muscle meat, I'll be naturally getting more calcium and less phosphorus anyway. So increasing calcium and displacing some of the phosphorus-rich animal proteins I'm getting with calcium-rich animal protein, and then consuming the fruit alongside to interfere with some of the metabolism of that fructose. That's kind of the idea behind all of that, as far as I'm aware. Now, I will say from my own experience consuming high amounts of especially refined sugar, but high glycemic load carbohydrates in general, I have noticed I feel unstable, imbalanced, and jittery. And I see a lot of that instability and jitteriness in the Ray Peat crowd. They're eating high amounts of carbohydrates, a lot of times refined carbs, mostly nothing but high glycemic load carbohydrates. And they're consuming large amounts of caffeine and strong black coffee. And I see the ups and downs and ebbs and flows in their energy. And I don't want to sound disrespectful, because you can kind of tell it looks like this burnt out type of vibe. But then again, this is just my observation, and it's not empirical evidence like all the rodent studies and mechanistic data that they quote from freaking 1960 or whatever in Danny Roddy's videos. Anyway, yeah, it's a straw man, I know. So there's some more kind of ad hominem attacks coming you guys' way. I know how much you guys hate that. You leave me paragraphs on my comments section about how wrong I am. But some other things I've noticed the Ray Peat crowd. So just to close this part, refined carbohydrates, in my opinion, are a no. Although I'm open to experimenting with them just to see how it'll make me feel. I've done this in the past. And some of my followers will crucify me. And I'll talk about weight gain and stuff here in a while, because talking to me about weight gain I think is kind of funny. So just because I don't give a shit about weight gain personally, but I don't advocate these things to clients. This is my own experimentation. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, so whole fruits, good. Refined carbs, not so good. And at a baseline, even if you're not following Ray Peat's principles or into all that, I think the vitamin C, the B1, and the folate you'll get from things like bananas and oranges is important, as well as the magnesium and potassium. I think that that's something that is missing in a lot of carnivore diets, which is why people even might feel like garbage. Especially if you're not properly preparing your meat, so you get the drippings where the potassium and magnesium goes to. Anyway, let's see. Let's get into the PUFA stuff, polyunsaturated fatty acids. Ray Peat just outright demonizes all polyunsaturated fatty acids. He he says, oh, omega-3 is not good, omega-6 is not good, it's rancid, and the prostaglandin production in general is bad, and it's unstable, and yada yada. So, let's see. So one thing I thought was interesting is that, you'll ask, so there was a question that they asked, how does, if omega-3 is bad, if DHA and EPA omega-3s are bad from like fish oil and stuff, then one of the questions is, well, what about the fact that 60% of the brain is made of DHA or something like that? How do you explain that? Like, how do we create the DHA in the brain if we don't get those fatty acids? Does the body just kind of have its own endogenous way of producing this, the DHA in the brain? And it was, what's his name, Georgi Dinkoff or whatever, who says that in a healthy person, probably the majority of the brain is saturated fat. And he claims the main reason why studies show that brain is like 60% DHA is because it's looking at the average human. And the average human is getting all of this polyunsaturated fatty acids from all over the diet. And he's saying that the composition of fats in the brain is not standardized and it's heavily dependent on the person's diet. And he's saying the DHA in the brain is from unhealthy people who accumulated it from their diet over time, and that's not the natural human state, and it's not the optimal composition of fats in the brain. So therefore he's saying consuming omega-3 is probably not a good idea, and you should do Ray Peat's dogma and just eat nothing but saturated fats and completely deplete your body of omega-3 and omega-6 entirely. I think that that's another kind of heresy, or I don't know if we'd say heresy, but like fallacy maybe. Just because the evidence on omega-3, especially fish oil, and studying the brain and things like that is overwhelmingly positive and in favor of fish oil supplementation and omega-3. And I just don't, and also all of the blue zones, which I know is such a controversial topic, their majority of their protein comes from fish. And there's only one society that doesn't, and that's the Loma Linda, which actually, if we're talking the vegan, actually I think in the centenarians and their population are mostly pescatarian as well. And they live in freaking California where fish is abundant. So anyway, I mean, we could look at Okinawa, we could look at Costa Rica, we could look at Crete. They're all island populations basically on the coast with abundant sea life. And then the next thing is just that the majority of the scientific literature suggests fish intake is overwhelmingly healthy, and that's one of the arguments against mTOR being unhealthy, is that fish is a main source of direct mTOR in the diet, basically, or not mTOR, but forgot what it was. I think it was mTOR. I don't remember. But so anyway, yeah, the vast majority of literature points towards seafood being overwhelmingly healthy and one of the main predictors in good health and longevity over time. Fish oil supplementation, and with a couple exceptions, like some of the, I think, cohort studies that showed a pretty crazy increased risk of dying from like stroke or something, or heart disease. Now I think that fish oil supplementation is kind of like is a nuanced subject, and a lot of it might have to do with oxidation, oxidized products, and what type of fish oil you get, and other things. Because yeah, I've noticed a trend between people who supplement high dose fish oil and dying prematurely from heart disease. Like Charles Parquin, for example, I think is a good possibility, but he might also just have low calcium intake, maybe. So yeah, I think omega-6, linoleic acid is not good, but I think omega-3, DHA, and EPA, specifically from fish, whole food, is probably not a bad idea. I think the supplementation you should be careful with, but it does have some very beneficial therapeutic application, like things like depression. I think their talk on dopamine versus serotonin is productive, and I think it's trending in the right direction. But it's kind of like what works in practical application, but your mechanistic explanation for why it works can oftentimes not reflect the reality of what's actually happening. Kind of like with the low-fat vegan diets and its supposed effects on reversing heart disease, like the Dean Ornish trials and things like that. Number one, obviously the degree of effect's not that significant, but number two, it might be just because they're eliminating PUFAs from the diet rather than eliminating saturated fat like they want you to think. The other thing is, it may help with heart disease, the actual protocol, but the reason why that protocol works might not be what the guru claims. Same thing with like Dr. Sebi and his diet supposedly reversing cancer. I've talked many times about how it has nothing to do with being alkaline, but it has more to do with simulating autophagy most likely, and possibly removing PUFAs as well. So, yeah, I mean, it doesn't have, like, this repeat stuff might work for certain conditions, but it might have nothing to do with carbon dioxide, might not have anything to do with reversing hypothyroidism, might not have anything to do with, like, omega-3. So, yeah, just keep, listen to this with an open mind rather than, like, thinking, I'm not bashing Ray Peat's ideas, I'm just saying, like, there might be a lot more nuance, and I feel like some of his ideas are not good. And also, Ray Peat and his followers typically are real big on, like, yeah, you're not meant to, like, take Ray Peat's ideas and just believe them as scripture or whatever. But you should take what you think is useful and, like, apply them and make it work for you or something. It's like, so that's kind of what I'm discussing here. So if I have any of Ray Peat's followers crucifying me in the comments like I usually do when I make videos about him, I don't know. But I'm open for productive dialogue. I like when they, like, debunk my shit point by point. So anyway. So one more thing I want to talk about as far as Ray Peat and his followers are concerned, okay? Danny Roddy has some content about hair loss. And while I think his talk about calcium and the nutrient recommendations are probably good, first of all, his guest, Georgy Dinkoff, or however you say his name, I apologize if I'm saying his name wrong, guys, Bulgarian or something, but that guy is bald, okay? That Georgy Dinkoff, or whatever his name is, he's freaking bald, okay? He's like the most baldest of the bald person, just like me. And, one of the main benefits, supposedly, of Ray Peat's ideas is reversing baldness. Please tell me how the hell do we have Danny Roddy, who claims Ray Peat's principles should reverse baldness because of carbon dioxide, hypothyroidism in disguise, or parathyroidism and blah, blah, blah. But yet we have Georgy Dinkencroft, whatever his name is, and this guy is supposedly following all of Ray Peat's principles too, yet this motherfucker is bald as shit as well. Okay, can someone please, something I need to make a separate video on, just straight up, because I'm so curious what, especially because Ray Peat's followers come on my freaking videos telling me I'm fucking bald, and they're like, yeah, you're bald, you need more Mexican Coke, sounds like carbohydrate deficiency. Your body is stressed, you should follow Ray Peat's principles to reverse your baldness, son. It's like, what the fuck does Georgy Dinkenkopf on freaking Danny Roddy's freaking video podcast or whatever, that guy's bald too. So I thought that this shit was supposed to reverse baldness. You're gonna tell me that guy is just shaving his head on purpose? He's not actually bald? Maybe he should start growing out his hair, you know, if he can, to show us that it has nothing to do with DHT, which I think most of the hair loss community will disagree with. You know, so yeah. Anyway, we'll see if the calcium to phosphorus ratio changes my hair, because it looks like I'm getting a lot more growth right now, but I don't know. And I know a lot of the low carb community, by the way, is bald. I mean, Charles Poliquin was bald. Freaking Primal Edge Health is bald. Freaking Bart K is fucking bald. So maybe there, you know, this is the thing, is it's like there might be something to it. But why is that Georgie Dinkencroft bald if Ray Peat's principles reverses baldness? Please, someone tell me. So let's see. What else is there to talk about? Yeah, and also it also seems like Ray Peat, when he talks, I'm not sure if maybe he's trying to increase carbon dioxide production when he talks, but the way is it stuttering, I guess? He's like, yeah, so when I went to school, it is, yes, I went to college back in Vietnam, 1971, and, yeah, went to college in Vietnam. Like, he's like stuttering in between all of his freaking words. I'm not laughing, I guess I am laughing at the guy. I don't mean it in a disrespectful manner, but it's ironic to me, I guess. Or it's just like, how is he taught, like, is it his brain, like, malfiring from all the aspirin and the freaking thyroid hormone? It's just like burning up like brain cells or something. That sounds real disrespectful, but I'm genuinely curious if his brain is short-circuiting from all the freaking sugar and Mexican Coke and the fucking thyroid hormone that guy might be taking, or might have been taking longer than all these other people on his content. Is that the result of 30 years of freaking aspirin, thyroid hormone, and avoiding omega-3 fish oils and things? Is that the result of freaking DHA and EPA deficiency in his brain? And thyroid supplementation and high sugar content after 30 years is like, I'll start stuttering and being like, you know, and smiling the entire time. Like, and I like smiles, but they have a tendency of laughing and at certain times and smiling in kind of creepy ways. And so I so apologize. That might sound like I'm probably gonna make a lot of enemies in the Ray Peat crowd. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but it definitely sounds disrespected. So whatever. I'm genuinely curious. These are genuine like curiosities of mine about this. It's like I just don't want to sound that way. And now, mind you, and maybe I'm missing something. Because I know when I'm talking right now, I'm exhaling a lot of carbon dioxide. So maybe if I broke up my words and took a breath in between every word, then I'd maximize my carbon dioxide levels, and then I'll reach the freaking nirvana of health like freaking Ray Peat or something. Is that what's going on? Is taking a breath in between every sentence to not freaking hyperventilate and then create a freaking panic attack, I hope, because that's what I feel like it's about to happen. So I don't know. Someone tell me why Ray Peat hyperventilates in the middle of his freaking every single fucking word. Please, someone fucking tell me that. Oh my god, I should have started the video off with my critiques on Georgie, whatever his name is, and his baldness, and then freaking Ray Peat and his hyperventilation syndrome every second of his interviews and whatnot. Anyway, so there's a lot of valuable information in that crowd, yes, but there's also a lot of real, like, you need to be very careful with people, okay, like, because if they're wrong about any of this, these are some very serious things, like calcium, vitamin D, omega-3 supplementation, eating a lot of refined sugar, the main thing about the principles that they talk about is that all of these things do have very powerful effects on physiology. If you're consuming high amounts of calcium, high amounts of vitamin D, if you are consuming, if you're completely removing all freaking omega-3 and polyunsaturated fats, they say 4 grams for every 2,000 calories or something, which is such a small amount. And you're eating lots of refined sugar or lots of carbs in general. And then also, especially if you start supplementing aspirin and thyroid hormone and freaking progesterone, the big thing here is these are extremely powerful things that modify physiology substantially. You're not going to follow, like, every single one of these things that they recommend, you will notice some kind of difference, especially on a blood test. These principles modify physiology significantly. So it's not a matter of, is this going to, like, make a significant difference in physiology? Because every single one of these things will change your physiology significantly. The question is it to a benefit or to a detriment? Because that's the thing, is these are significant freaking changes. And they could be very, very bad for some people or very, very good. Like, you're not just going to supplement high-dose calcium and not have physiological changes. Taking a large amount of any mineral will have significant physiological changes in your body. Same thing with vitamin D. That does some very, like, multifactorial things that will show up significantly in all hormonal processes. Taking thyroid hormone definitely will. And whether you supplement omega-3 or not will also change things significantly. So it's very important to be very critical about these people's ideas. It's not as simple as like, oh, am I going to eat 100 grams of protein or 200 grams of protein? Am I going to eat more monounsaturated or polyunsaturated fats? Like, this will completely shift various things in your metabolism. So you should be asking questions. Okay, so one more thing to talk about here. Actually, I'm going to make a separate video on my specific diet and some of the things that I'm going to be trying to achieve or whatever. Like, just because I've gotten so many questions about, am I going to gain weight? Am I concerned about gaining weight? Mixing carbs and fat? What am I attempting to achieve? Blah, blah, blah. But the main thing that you guys need to know is, first of all, these are all of the principles that I'm paying attention to. These are some of my critiques and ideas on it. I haven't even gotten to collagen and glycine and all the other shit that they talk about, but and then eating more liver and stuff like that, and oysters, which is always good. But yeah, so I'll make another video talking about all of that and weight gain and shit. But the main thing is hyperparathyroidism, eating more calcium, eating more vitamin D, and then maybe upping my carb intake, mostly from whole fruits. So yeah, leave your question and comments down below. And if there's anything you want me to cover in my next video on this repeat stuff, let me know in the comments and I'll get back to you ASAP. Alright, talk to you guys next time.